I would have thought, and I got to own it, that that these tariffs were going to sink this economy by this time, and they didn't.
That is, of course, comedian and host of the Club Random podcast, Bill Maher, who appears to be backtracking on his early criticisms of President Trump's tariff policy.
In the past, Maher had called Trump's tariff-led approach to relations with China, quote, backwards, and even went so far as to suggest he was rooting for a recession just so Trump would realize this was not good and reverse course. But in a recent conversation with left-leaning commentator Brian Tyler Cohen, Maher admitted the disastrous effects he predicted would come from the tariffs just haven't come to pass. Take a listen to a little more of their conversation.
I remember along with probably most people, were saying at the beginning, oh, you know, by the 4th of July, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty.
Meanwhile, President Trump is back in Washington after a trip to Scotland, where he signed his latest trade deal following the implementation of his so-called Liberation Day tariffs. The deal with the European Union sets tariffs on goods from Europe at 15%, just half the rate that Trump had previously threatened, and includes a pledge from Europe to buy more than $750 billion in American energy over the next 3 years.
But some Democrats in Congress are not so impressed. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer slamming the deal as, quote, fake. He points out that European leaders have admitted that the deal is not legally binding and that they have no control over whether or not the investments actually happen. I suspect there's going to be one of these ones where we have mixed feelings maybe on each side. I mean, I do think off the top it is fair for people on my side of the small desk to say that some of the predictions of absolute sort of apocalyptic collapse in relation to these tariffs have not happened. I also think that the counterbalance to that is the Liberation Day tariffs were threatened for about a week, during which the
economy did dive.
The economy did dive. The stock market lost about 1/8 of its value, and there was a real crisis, at which point Trump backtracked. So was the prediction wrong, or did Trump not actually follow through at the scale he had threatened? He certainly didn't follow through at the scale he threatened, so there we are.
Right, yeah, I saw, you know, my dear friend Batya was also tweeting about, doesn't this prove that the supporters of tariffs were right? I saw Orrin Cass saying that with Michael Schellenberger. Does it? We don't have the massive tariffs in place. Trump is out there negotiating trade deals with everyone, trying to bring the trade down. Maybe the market is seeing what Trump is doing, looking at the long-term picture and saying, okay, Trump's goal is to have trade deals, allowing for more trade and fewer tariffs with nations all over the world, and we're reacting positively to that.
Right.
At the moment in which it seemed most likely that we were going to have crippling tariffs, the economy was doing worse.
Right.
So I think it's almost, I like Bill Maher, I generally agree with him. I think it's almost the opposite of what he's saying. It's doing well because there was a reversal of course, and the long-term plan, the idea that we're going to have permanent tariffs in order to cripple bringing foreign goods in and do everything here at home, that wing of the Trump thought lost. And tariffs are a negotiating tool to have better trade relations with everyone. That view won. And so the point of that is eventually to get to free trade. So the market's reacting favorably to that. Also, you can never say that, you know, if the market's going like this with what the policy was, well, maybe if there was no tariffs at all, it would have been going like this. Like, just because it's doing well because the American economy is resilient, maybe it could have been doing even better if we never threatened tariffs in the first place. Or maybe not, because they were just part of getting a favorable trade negotiations. But that's how I would address his comments there.
Yeah, and the other point is that we're just getting toward the end of a period of massive uncertainty about all of this, because there was that initial week of the Liberation Day tariffs when everything was pretty catastrophic, and then Trump backed off and there were supposed to be 90 trade deals in 90 days, which didn't happen. Now with the August 1st deadline looming on Friday, there's this rush to get agreements in place. They've got the EU one. Britain agreed a kind of framework a while back, and some other nations have done likewise. But to me, it seems at least as likely that companies or nations that have a net importing balance into the United States have thought over the past couple of months, well, let's just see where this settles first and then see, are we going to eat a slightly increased tariffs? Are we going to pass those on or not? The rate of inflation certainly has not risen to the level that some people thought, but it has in fact ticked up. It's ticked up by a few tenths of a percentage point over a couple of months. Does that continue? Does that accelerate now? That seems to me what the danger is. I just don't think the fundamental question of has Trump's approach to tariffs worked? I just don't think we have a definitive answer to that yet.
And then nothing makes me more insane. I want to pull out my hair. Sorry, I didn't.
At least you have the option of doing that.
Is when the White House or some Trump administration affiliated account was celebrating how much revenue the tariffs have brought into the government. People, that's taxes. That the revenue that's generated, it does generate revenue for the government in terms of higher costs being passed on to us, the people buying the stuff. It's the exact equivalent of the U.S. government imposing a sales tax of something on goods and raising a bunch of money on that and saying, look at how much money we raised, yay! You are paying for it. I am paying for it. You are paying for it. Anyone buying things here is paying for it. If you want to make an argument that this is a better way to generate revenue for the federal government than taxes or property taxes or income tax, okay, whatever, we can have a discussion about what is the ideal way to raise money for legitimate government functions. That you think there's a lot of legitimate functions. I think there's just some government functions, but fine. The government has to raise some amount of money. We can have a conversation about what's the best way to do that.
Tax the rich, Robby, is the best way to do that.
That's what you think the best way is? But this is just a form of that. They're not raising money out of thin air. They're making it sound like this is all coming from foreign people.
Yeah.
We're raising money off of foreign people. No, the cost of the good, it's passed on to the American consumers, and so they're raising it from us. And that is a loathsome thing to be celebrating for those of us who think we're taxed enough already.
Yeah, well, it's also just the way it is spoken about suggests often that it is the foreign government who's sort of handing over money to the American government, or it's the president of the European Commission saying, here you go, have a few billion or $trillion. Like, that's not what's happening. It's a tax on trade, respectively. And that's where the problem is.
It's a tax saying, well, now this good costs this much, or they have to pay this thing, so then the seller raises the price of it by exactly that much to cover the difference, and then you pay more for it. So it's revenue generated indirectly by you, and that should really be kept in mind here.
I can't believe I'm going to be obtuse enough as to make a slightly Trump-friendly argument here, but to that point about the seller raises the exact value of it, don't you think there's an argument to be made that given the importance of the US market to a lot of importers into the US, they would eat some level of tariff without passing every cent of that tariff on to American consumers?
Maybe. I don't know. I think the evidence is, we'd have to refer to some trade economist on that, but I think what I've read about the analysis is they pretty much pass on the full cost exactly to the dollar amount. That markets are relatively efficient. I know some people on the left think it's just massive. If you look at the profit margins in many sectors of the economy, while a lot of people on the left like to imagine fat cats just making a hand over fist in all these different industries, the profit margins on food, on clothing, on a lot of things are very slim. They just don't have the room to eat some massive cost increase. So no, they pass that on. It's slim. They make a lot of profits because they sell a lot of things, but the profit on each individual item is very slight.
Yeah, I just think it is going to be interesting to see how inflation develops, particularly over the next, say, 3 to 6 months, and whether we will see that happening to an extent that I think could be pretty politically ruinous for Trump, because his approval ratings on inflation in particular are actually really quite bad.
He's going to insult Jerome Powell to his face until Jerome Powell deals with this.
Drops interest rates, we shall see. A controversial nominee appointed as a lifetime appeals judge by this decision has Democrats up in arms. Stay with us, you're watching The Hill's Rising.